The call to solitude of Rumi whispers across time. The breeze at dawn carries secrets, and don't go back to sleep. What secrets? And why do they arrive before the world wakes? Because there are voices inside you that only speak when the noise of the world fades. Beneath your name, your job, your titles, and your habits lives a deeper presence, quiet, ancient, patient. It waits not in the crowd, but in the hollow between breaths. It is not the self that posts and performs. It is the one that aches and remembers. The one who was here before your first memory and will remain after your final breath. That self is not found through applause or validation. It is born in solitude. In the next few moments, walk with Rumi into the inner country of the soul, into that still landscape where truth first begins to breathe. We will talk about the power of being alone, not as escape, but as return, a pilgrimage inward to the place you forgot existed. We fear solitude not because we dislike quiet, but because in quiet the masks fall. Around others we learn choreography, how to speak to please, how to move to belong, how to smile to be accepted. But solitude has no audience, no script, no rehearsal, only breath, thought, heartbeat, and the weight of presence pressing inward. There, in that still chamber, the true journey begins. Rumi never romanticized loneliness. He treated solitude as sacred ground, not a retreat from life, but a doorway into it. He wrote, "Time alone in your room can become a treasure beyond any gift. That is not decoration, it is direction. The soul does not awaken in the crowd, it wakes in the hush. When the world stops shouting and your essence begins to whisper. In solitude, the avoided begins to surface. The ache behind your practiced smile, the looping thoughts like caged birds, the emotions that never found a name. There is no one left to impress, no one left to fool. Here the real self begins to stir, not the self built from reaction and memory, but the living stillness beneath it all. At first, silence is loud. Stillness feels unnatural. We are untrained at witnessing ourselves without distraction. We escape through screens, conversations, endless plans, anything but this raw meeting with the self. Yet if you stay, if you sit in the fire long enough, something shifts. Thoughts slow, armor loosens. The stories about who you are and what you lack begin to dissolve like mist. What remains is unpolished, tender, and beautifully human. The purpose of solitude is not isolation. It is integration. It reconnects you to the world by reconnecting you to yourself. How can you truly meet another if you've never met yourself? How can you love honestly if you've never faced the parts of you you've exiled? In solitude, forgiveness becomes possible. You begin to see your mistakes not as proof of failure, but as invitations to grow. You realize your wounds do not define you. They refine you. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. Awareness itself. Vast, still, witnessing. This awareness does not announce itself. It waits for surrender. When you stop resisting your own company, it rises quiet and immense, like sunrise over an ancient sea. You feel it in your breath, in the pulse beneath your wrist, in the space between thoughts. It has been there all along, waiting for you to listen. That's why seekers throughout history have gone to deserts, forests, and caves, not to escape the world, but to peel off its illusions. They understood what modern life forgets. Solitude is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is not a void. It is a vessel filled with presence, with awareness, with the unspoken nearness of God. When everything external quiets, you start to hear what has been whispering inside since the beginning. Return to yourself, for there I dwell. And yet solitude is not always gentle. It confronts you with your shadows, the buried grief, the unhealed anger, the forgotten dreams. It shows you where you've been dishonest with your own heart. Many turn back at this threshold, afraid of what will surface. But Rumi would say, don't run from your wounds. They are the openings through which the light enters. Pain is not punishment. It is purification. Stay long enough, and you will notice something miraculous. The silence that once felt heavy begins to feel alive. The stillness that once frightened you begins to cradle you. You start to sense a quiet intelligence beneath your chaos, a rhythm of mercy moving through every breath. This is the early language of presence. When you surrender to solitude, you stop chasing meaning and start embodying it. You begin to live slower, speak softer, listen deeper. You realize that peace was never somewhere to arrive. It was a way of being that waited behind your constant striving. Life stops being a race and becomes a prayer. Before you go back to the noise, ask yourself, have you ever truly met yourself in silence, without your phone, without distraction, just you and your breath? Because maybe what you call loneliness is simply your soul waiting to be heard. If this spoke to something deep within you, stay with this journey. Like, share, and subscribe. The next chapter takes you beyond solitude, into the void where the self dissolves and the divine begins. There comes a moment on the path when silence becomes heavier than speech. You no longer crave answers nor comfort, nor the noise of belonging. You just want to breathe without remembering yourself. In that depth, every identity begins to fall away. The names, the roles, even your own prayers, all dissolve into something wordless. This is the gate the mystics called fauna, the passing away of the self. It's not death. It's returning to the one who was never apart from you. Rumi said, "Die before you die, and you will awaken into life." What dies is not your body. It's the illusion that you were ever separate. When the heart enters the void, it trembles at first. Because for the first time, there is no image to hold, no thought to lean on, no I left to defend. You are suspended. Not in fear, but in surrender. You feel the weight of divine stillness pressing on your chest. And in that silence, you begin to hear the sound of your own soul. Not the voice that speaks in words, but the pulse that repeats only one name. This is what IbnArabi meant when he wrote, "The lover and the beloved are one reality, the mirror and its reflection. To the untrained eye, It looks like disappearance. But to the awakened, it is unveiling. The void is not empty. It's filled with a presence so complete that it erases everything less than truth. Every attachment, every false identity, every clinging thought burns in that light. It's why the mystics weep in silence, not from sorrow, but from recognition. When you reach this stage, the world begins to look different. The trees seem to breathe remembrance. The wind carries verses of mercy. Even your pain starts to feel sacred because you see how it bends you toward Him. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Through me," because now you know the ache was never punishment. It was permission. Permission to return to your original silence. In the void, you don't find God as something new. You remember that He was always the background behind every joy and loss, that every heartbreak was actually an invitation home, and every longing was the echo of His call. So you sit quietly, not to escape life, but to enter it more deeply, to taste it as it truly is, a shadow of the unseen, a whisper of the eternal, a reflection of the light that never fades. In that stillness, the boundaries blur. There is no you praying to Him. There is only His remembrance flowing through you. Each breath becomes dhikr, each heartbeat a verse of praise, each tear a river of return. This is the secret the world calls madness, but the saints call awakening. When you finally realize you are not a seeker standing before God, you are a breath within His remembrance. What if the silence you've been running from is the very place where God has been waiting for you all along? If this reflection stirred something in you, share it with another soul who's searching for peace. Like, subscribe, and stay with us on this path. The journey inward is just beginning. After silence comes return. After vanishing comes vision. And when the self dissolves, something vast begins to breathe through you. The mystics call this baka, the state of remaining in God after disappearing in Him. It is the moment when remembrance stops being an act and becomes your existence. You no longer remember Allah. You are remembered through Him. The tongue grows quiet, but the soul begins to speak. You see Him not only in the sky or scripture, but in every face, every act, every unfolding of time. When someone smiles at you, you see mercy reflected. When someone hurts you, you see the wisdom hidden inside the wound. You no longer divide the world into blessings and trials. Everything becomes a verse from the same source. This is where real vision begins, not with the eyes, but with the heart. IbnArabi wrote, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me." It means that perception itself is sacred. You are no longer a bystander to life. You are part of its divine witnessing. Everywhere you look, you see His face. In movement, in stillness, in joy and sorrow, even in your doubts, because the one who allows you to question is also the one leading you to answers. At this stage, worship transforms. It is no longer just prostration. It is presence. No longer ritual, but recognition. You begin to pray not because you must, but because you can't imagine not speaking to Him. You begin to serve not to earn heaven, but because your heart has already found it. When you meet people, your eyes soften. You no longer see their faults, but their forgetting. You realize that every sinner is just someone who has momentarily turned away from their own light. So instead of judging, you pray. Instead of reacting, you remember, because remembrance becomes your only language. Your mind becomes a mirror, reflecting His mercy without distortion. Your heart becomes a lamp, quietly burning with His love. You move through the world like water, gentle yet unstoppable. That's why the saints could live among kings and beggars with the same peace. Because their home was not made of walls, it was remembrance. Their rest was not in sleep, it was in surrender. Their joy was not in things, it was in being nothing but His. And that's the paradox. When you stop trying to be everything, you finally become free. When you stop controlling life, life itself begins to move through you. You no longer carry the burden of perfection. You just carry presence. You still feel pain, but you no longer drown in it. You still lose things, but you no longer lose yourself. Because the one who remains is always closer than your grief. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "True wealth is the richness of the heart." And now you understand this is not metaphor. It is the reality of the one who remembers. Because when the heart is full of remembrance, there is no room left for fear. Modern psychology calls it mindfulness. Sufism calls it divine witnessing, but both point to the same truth. The peace that comes when your awareness rests in the present. Because the present is where God speaks. The past is gone, the future hasn't come. Only this breath is real, and this breath carries His name. So you begin to walk slower, listen deeper, respond gentler. You start to feel the rhythm of the divine pulse behind ordinary things. The flicker of a candle, the fall of rain, a child's laughter, all become ayat, signs of the unseen. You no longer seek miracles, because everything has become one. Every sunrise is a resurrection, every tear is a baptism, every meeting a message, every silence a doorway. This is when remembrance becomes effortless. You don't repeat it, you become it. You move through the world as a quiet remembrance of God. And those who meet you feel something they cannot name, a peace that reminds them of home, because true dhikr isn't in the tongue, it's in the way you live, the way you love, the way you listen. To forgive is dhikr, to stay patient is dhikr, to smile when your heart aches, that too is dhikr, because through you, He is remembering Himself, and when you understand that, fear disappears completely, because how can the drop fear the ocean when it was never apart from it? How can the heart fear loss when it belongs to the eternal? So you stop running, you stop grasping, you breathe, you return, and in that return everything becomes sacred again. You realize that the divine isn't hiding in temples or texts. He's hiding in moments, in your breath, in your waiting, in your quiet surrender. That's when the world changes, not outside you, but within you. The noise softens, the ego loosens, And silence becomes not emptiness, but companionship. Because in that silence he is speaking, always has been, always will be. And now you can finally hear it, that eternal whisper beneath everything. I am with you. I was always with you, if silence itself could speak. What do you think it's been trying to tell you all along? If this journey touched your heart, don't keep it silent. Share it, breathe it, live it, and let remembrance become your way of being. Follow, subscribe, and keep walking with us, because this path doesn't end, it deepens.